This is Bonjour Chai, the X-rated anti-Semitism edition. I'm Avi Feingold in Montreal, and I'm here with Phoebe Maltz-Bovey in Toronto. We are your Frozen Chosen. On today's show, we ask the questions that no one, absolutely no one, has been asking, like, is Elon Musk an anti-Semite? Are Jews white? And, you know, exactly how hot is the Blue Jays Spencer Horwitz? Before I wanted to do that, I did want to mention a bit of business because we still have about a week or a little bit longer, if you're really pushing, for our Great Canadian Sermon Slam. And so if you're a rabbi or you want to submit your rabbi, you want to nominate your rabbi, just get us your sermon, bonjour@thecjn.ca. We are going to be running it, I believe, the week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's always a fun time. We have the massive Kiddush cup that we give out. So the Great Canadian Sermon Slam, let's get to that and send in your submissions. We're going to crown Canada's great sermonizer soon enough.
Beth David Hebrew School is now accepting new students. One of Toronto's most dynamic, egalitarian, conservative congregations is offering personalized Hebrew lessons, hands-on learning, exciting field trips, and small group activities, all with a hot dinner included. This is Jewish exploration that will last your children a lifetime. Classes run weekly on Monday nights from 5 to 7:15 p.m., starting September 18th. To learn more and enroll, visit bethdavid.com or email Adina, that's ADINA, at bethdavid.com.
Phoebe, welcome back.
Thank you.
Can you welcome our guest on the show today?
Certainly. So our guest, also a Torontonian, Jon Kay, an editor at Quillette, who I've known from writing things for a while now, and it's an honor with a U, honor spelled with a U, ever since I've passed my Canadian citizenship test. Honor gets that U. Honor to have you here.
Originally a Montrealer, I should say.
Oh.
I wasn't going to mention it.
25 years. 25 years in Montreal.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
Has anything happening with you guys? Phoebe, you took the week off last week.
I did. It was a very glamorous week off. The daycare is closed for a week that my just turned 2-year-old younger daughter is in. So we went around the city, ate a lot of food. She napped. She'll only nap in the stroller. So we did a lot of kind of me ducking into a coffee shop while she was asleep and eating a cookie, things like that. John, what have you been up to?
You know what? I was worried my material was too banal, but apparently
I think I may have. I'm aiming. I want to make it. I don't want anybody to have a hard act to follow here. So
I needn't have been concerned. This is equally banal, but my daughters are now of an age where the days before Labor Day is like I'm driving furniture to new apartments, and my eldest is at Queen's University in Kingston. Then I have another girl starting new schools, so it's all back to school, but high school and university edition.
Yeah, I was in New Jersey last week, celebrating the prime export of New Jersey, which is cousins.
Avi,
that's basically all that they export.
Did you know that this is a true story? Did you know that Sweden once colonized New Jersey?
Really?
When is this once? Was this like in the 80s
is that
or
why
the
people
1680s?
In Princeton, no. In Princeton, New Jersey, people are so blonde? Or
no. So this was like this brief interlude in the 17th. First of all, it wasn't called New Jersey. It was like something unpronounceable with like 4 umlauts. So, it was like something you and I couldn't pronounce. I'm guessing. I don't even know. But yeah, so there was like this brief interregnum where Sweden wanted to get in on the colonial game because France and England and Spain were doing it. Unfortunately, they picked New Jersey. I don't know how long it was, but next time you're there, there's probably like a highway marker somewhere.
Yeah, there's a massive IKEA right by Newark Airport.
No. You know what? There's more to Swedish culture. That's reductionist. There's more to Sweden. The Swedes were actually like big time imperial colonizers back in like the 15th.
So John, is what you're saying that we need to decolonize Sweden?
Well, no, Sweden can stay as it is. New Jersey clearly
we need
needs
to decolonize New Jersey.
I think
Okay.
if a lot of it
Get
can
on
be
that.
traced to the Scandinavian influence, and
That's
people don't.
interesting.
People don't.
I would
talk
never I think of New Jersey. So I lived in New Jersey for 4 years. I think of it as like Chris Christie, who does not strike me as a particularly Swedish gentleman.
I have cousins in New Jersey, and the sections of New Jersey they live in is like the opposite of the stereotype.
Oh, yeah. That's where I was. We were in Englewood, New Jersey for the weekend.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
quite frou-frou.
Maybe we have the same cousins.
Maybe you're the same person. Maybe am I just talking to one person? It's very
Perhaps.
confusing with a split screen. I was also thinking, this is kind of random, but how many daughters do we have between us? I feel like a lot.
I have 3.
I have 3.
And I have 2.
Wow.
So quite a lot of daughters.
Phoebe, you got some work to do.
Yeah, and I have a lot of advice. If we were going to go really banal, I could ask for how you do daughters' hair in the morning and actually get them to school if they make complicated requests.
The only hair care solution I like is the one you see on your screen. It's fail-proof, and as I get into middle age, I'm spending more and more time with baseball hats on.
Yeah.
Because there's just fewer angles that my head looks like it has hair. It used to be, as long as I didn't bend over, you couldn't see the male pattern baldness.
I see.
But now you kind of have to look at me at like a 20-degree upward angle for it to look respectable. So now
see.
it's
For
just...
those of you who can't see, John is wearing a Mercedes baseball cap with the number 44, signaling his approval of Barack Obama, I believe.
Okay, so, this is problematic in a way that you can't even understand. This is...
I'm a little bit concerned now.
So Lewis Hamilton, groundbreaking African-American, or is he Afro-British? Anyway, the first prominent black F1 driver, and I got this hat not to signal my allyship, but after I got it, my family told me about this because they watched that Drive to Survive show. And so this hat is a combination of snobbery, because it's got the Mercedes logo on it, because Lewis Hamilton drives for Mercedes, and allyship, because of his identity. So it kind of, I'd say it's a bridge building hat.
But Mercedes is that still considered problematic by Jews? Avi?
No. I
the
think
arbiter?
it's considered problematic by poor people, because it just like it looks like you're advertising.
Hey, I drive a Volkswagen, and I make jokes about it all the time, about how you can fit a dozen people, 45 if you fit the Jews in the ashtray.
My goodness,
wow.
Avi, you're going to be canceled off your own show.
We went from Phoebe
show.
eating a cookie.
I ate a cookie. It was a nice cookie. I ate it. Although I actually did cause internet controversy during the break, and I forgot to mention that. And it's actually kind of related to this. I took a picture from one of these stroller naps, just like my child wasn't even visible, but like the stroller was visible. And somebody tweeted at me, or this is kind of a segue into our topic, so just, it's a little clunky, but here we go. Somebody X'd at me or whatever.
No, don't say that.
Reposted.
Don't say that.
Post replied at me, "Nice stroller, those don't come cheap."
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Just somebody was so... And it's this stroller, it's so disgusting at this point, because we got it for my older daughter, and it's like got 2 children's worth of absolute crud on it, But yeah, that's right. It didn't come cheap. We thought about what to do for our December Toronto baby, and we figured we needed something that can like go over, snow. And we got one of these Up-A-Baby strollers, which we and practically everybody else in Toronto has done. And then, I got like very annoyed about this, and I blogged about it using my like 1 minute of internet time on the week off. And then all these commenters were like, well, actually, it's like nice to tell people that they spent too much on their stroller. And I was like, what? So anyway, that was my...
These are the kind
drama.
of things that turn people into celebrities. Like it's this kind of issue. I mean, Phoebe, I know I talked about this, and I forget it was on my podcast or your podcast, but it was that woman sipping coffee in her garden.
Yes.
I forget her name. Yeah, it's like this kind of super banal thing that just like blows up.
Yes, a woman. So Avi, to catch you and our listeners up, a woman once tweeted, back when it was called Twitter, that she was in her garden sipping coffee, and this broke the internet that day because that signals her privilege. And
no, she loved her husband so much.
Not everybody has a garden. Not everybody has a coffee. Not everybody can sit. Not everybody has a chair. Whatever. But that was the thing, and it was like, and this really did happen. So that's why I found the stroller thing, and I became fascinated by this. Like, why would you tell somebody something that they have is expensive? Are you telling them it was too expensive for them? Are you telling them that they are extremely wealthy? And if so, could they actually be as wealthy as they are imagined to be? Because that would be nice. And I had a lot of thoughts about this, but so that was my, I claim to have been offline last week, but I made a lot, I tried to be as online as possible with the minute in which I was online, which is important. So our topic today is this is the segue, Twitter, now known as X, Elon Musk's baby, that's asleep in Elon Musk's overpriced stroller at this very moment. Is it an anti-Semitic place? Is it more anti-Semitic since Musk took over? Is Musk personally anti-Semitic? Blah, 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 blah. This goes on forever and ever and ever. But what seems to have happened now is that the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, has been saying that Twitter is anti-Semitic. Elon Musk has threatened to sue the Anti-Defamation League for defamation of sorts. I don't know exactly. John, you're the legal expert among us. And it doesn't sound like he's actually suing them, at least thus far. But he made the legal aspect is maybe less interesting for us than the question of, is, as Elon Musk claims, the ADL one of the main propagators of Twitter anti-Semitism? Discuss.
Musk made this outrageous claim that the revenues were down at Twitter mostly because of the ADL, which is, it's a crazy thing to say. When Musk took it over, rightly or wrongly, I know people listening to the show probably have different views. There were a lot of companies, the marketing departments tend to be very risk averse. And Musk is obviously a very colorful and unpredictable figure. And, not unreasonably, there were a lot of people who said, well, we can advertise on Facebook where, alongside pictures of people's puppies and stuff, or we could advertise on Twitter alongside some, 47 tweet rant about how Armenians control the world money supply. And, let's go with Facebook, or let's go with Google, or let's go with YouTube or something, because it's just, we're more likely to have our ad content appear adjacent to respectable content.
Well, also, the user experience has changed.
Has Twitter become more anti-Semitic? Twitter has become more everything. It's become more anti-Semitic. It's become more philo-Semitic. It's become more Zionist. It's become more anti-Zionist. It's become more of everything because there are fewer...
Well, it's become less profitable.
It's become less profitable, but we're cultural critics. We don't care about that sort of filthy lucre. We're much more interested in how X affects the zeitgeist. And the zeitgeist on, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter because X is ridiculous, it's more extreme in every direction, because it used to be that if you got into some kind of crazy fight with somebody about, let's talk about Stroller Lady. This, I think her name's Phoebe. She's this Toronto resident who just she went viral for this. She posted pictures, some $4,000 stroller or something like that.
No, please, $50,000, please.
And she just did it casually, like the stroller was just in the corner of the frame.
Actually, the mortgage on the stroller.
Right. And I think there was a Birkin bag in the stroller, and the baby was
several
in the Birkin
of
bag.
them.
Yeah.
Several.
Anyway, so you could get into some crazy flame war, and eventually one person or another would get suspended. And the people would stop fighting because it's sort of like one person would be in the penalty box. And now you get, people still can, it's still possible. It's hard, but you have to work at it. It's just, there are fewer firewalls. It's harder for people to get suspended. And as a result, the rhetoric on both sides, I'm going to be accused of both sidesism, rhetoric gets stronger. The feuds go on longer, they go on deeper. And I got to say, they become more incomprehensible. So I'm not a Twitter celebrity by any means, but I have enough followers that sometimes people DM me and they want me to weigh in on one side or another of some Twitter dispute that's going on, in Canada or something. And often I can't even, I spend 5 minutes looking at what they're talking about and I can't even understand what they're arguing about because these things have festered for so long. And people have said such crazy things that it's actually impossible for somebody who's just new to that dispute to even disentangle what they're arguing about. But one thing they both agree on is that they're both, the other person is a Nazi. And
yeah. It's weird, right? But there was this one thing that I just wanted to say about the user experience that I think really, I saw a tweet that summed it up better than I could, and that I think, I don't know whether, John, you find that this is accurate to your experience of it too, but it's by the handle Rax King is Dead, some sort of Twitter personality. And the tweet is, "Bro, it is so fucking boring on here now. Every post in my feed is one of you joylessly dunking on someone called Dr. Alpha DDS or the gentleman classicist. Tiresome."
But he's
and then
right.
To which she replies, I'm going she by the avatar. I don't know who this is. "I'm doing it too, I know, because those are the only posts I see anymore." And I thought that I'm done quoting. I think that's 100% it. You see, it seems to be so the other thing that's I think relevant is that Musk has sort of monetized being controversial. So if you pay for the blue check, you can get money back by basically posting some kind of extremely outrageous, hateful thing that's going to get a lot of people angry and then get a lot of people who support it supporting it. So that seems to be another whole element of it. And that does seem to be these people who have these kind of, I don't even know if they're traditionalist or what, accounts where they're actually women should not have sex with too many different people. And then a million, and that was it for days. It was all about what women's body count should be. And it was it didn't used to be like this, is what I'm saying.
I love that that's your traditional voice. Do it again.
I'm going to do it continuous. I'm just going to get rid of, that's how I would talk if I were a trad male influencer.
Okay, but I want you to,
which I will become after this.
Okay, in this scene, you're a trad woman who's making a disparaging comment about a stroller you see in front of Starbucks.
Oh, that actually is another thing, is anti-stroller people who genuinely don't think anybody should ever use a stroller because they're attachment parents and think you should always be holding the baby.
We have some of those in my neighborhood, and they're kind of wearing, it's not, so I have worn a baby Bjorn, and okay. Anyone who's a parent knows what a baby Bjorn is. Mm-hmm. But this is not a baby Bjorn. This is something more primitive looking. It's like a sling. It's made of macrame or something. Mm-hmm. and the baby is glued onto your chest.
Yes.
It's like a decal or something. And
I think that, yeah.
It looks sweaty. It looks very sweaty.
Yeah, but to be the real deal, you have to do that till the baby's 10.
Well, yeah, okay. I know people, 2, 3, it's pushing it, but yeah, there's this is the sort of thing that's discussed in mummy forums where men aren't allowed, I think.
Okay, so back to the really masculine world of Elon Musk. Avi, I cut you off earlier, please.
I get the sense that with anti-Semitism, the fact that there are people who call out anti-Semitism full-time does actually lead to more anti-Semitism, because it has now become part of the zeitgeist. This idea that anti-Semitism needs to be fought means that there need to be people who are saying those things quietly get to say them out loud, because anti-Semitism is a thing now. Is this actually true? Is your experience of this something along these lines? Am I completely off? Does the ADL actually create, unwittingly more anti-Semitism, which is what they're trying to push away from?
I'm going to defend the ADL here in a backhanded way. Is that this is something I've been writing about for 20 years. Because we're here in Canada, as I think both of you know, there's this organization that's very active in fighting anti-Semitism called B'nai B'rith. And I remember when I was at the National Post newspaper, and every year I'd get the B'nai B'rith report on anti-Semitism, and I would read it. And I remember I'd have a stack of these reports, because when I began my journalism career, I was a diligent filing cabinet junkie. I think I had a B'nai B'rith folder. Subtopic anti-Semitism. And then I'd look through 6 or 7 years of it, and it's every single report was anti-Semitism is skyrocketing, spiking, an epidemic. And my own personal experience ran the opposite of that. Like when I started in journalism in the late 90s, early noughts, another term I don't like, I got a lot of anti-Semitic email. And often on subjects that had nothing to do with like the Middle East or Judaism. It was, I'd write something about, I don't know, capital gains taxes. And it's like, well, of course, that's what a Jew would say. And that just tailed off. And the last, I guess I've been in journalism almost 25 years, there has been a steady decline in the anti-Semitism that exists in not just on the email I get, but just like the general tenor of society. I find anti-Semitism generally has been on the decrease. The anti-Semitism that still exists is more visible because Twitter and other social media give us a window into the whack jobs who still believe Jews control the banking system. Like, we saw an example of this a couple of days ago. There was a couple of dozen like truly cracked nuts who staged some kind of weird demonstration in front of a shopping center near Disney World. And like the American media covered it like it was, Kristallnacht or something like that. And, as recently as 20 years ago, something like that would have been confined to the local media. So the anti-Semitism that does exist, we have a window into it. Personally, I think that anti-Semitism now, and again, this makes me unpopular on both sides because I think it's massively reduced as a force in our society. What I do see is you have groups like B'nai B'rith and the ADL, which were formed. They've done one, in part with the intention of shutting down anti-Semitism, with the best of intentions, and they've done a lot of great work. But the pattern in organizations is organizations, regardless of their mission, don't just say, well, we've accomplished our objectives, so we're going to shut down now and return all our money to the donors. Organizations perpetuate themselves. Organizations attract leaders who are true believers in the mission. And many leaders of Jewish organizations I meet, especially organizations oriented toward fighting anti-Semitism, truly do believe that, we're on the cusp of, maybe not a Holocaust, but we're on the cusp of some kind of cataclysm in which Jews are just going to be openly attacked on the street and stuff like that. You see this kind of language, and I say, what are you talking about? That's crazy. But there are people, and I don't want to create a parody version of these people. Sometimes they come by their fears honestly, but often these are the sort of people who rise to the leadership of these organizations. I don't think it's just about money. Many actually believe we're on the cusp of an anti-Semitic cataclysm. And what I see, unfortunately, is that spirit weaponized on both sides. So, it doesn't matter what you're debating. Well, here, let's take a parochial example, which is the convoy movement here in Canada, which, for those outside Canada, there was a bunch of not just truckers, but primarily truckers who were vaccine skeptical, to use a euphemism, who sort of occupied downtown Ottawa for a couple of weeks. And the people, I didn't agree with the convoy, but what I disagreed with more was people who were so eager to attack the convoy and the people running it that if they saw a bumper sticker or if they saw, some whack job was carrying a Nazi flag because he was accusing Trudeau of being a Nazi, not because this guy was a Nazi. He was accusing Trudeau of being a Nazi, which is ridiculous. And the guy's an idiot, but it's not like he was carrying the Nazi flag because he says, yeah, let's start a Nazi party. And they would take these images and say, you see, the movement, it's just a bunch of anti-Semitic crackpots. And then on the other side, you often have conservatives who will take some Looney Tunes professor of English from some liberal arts college in the United States who makes completely weird and creepy comments about Israel. And they'll take him and say, you see, they'll take him as the flag bearer of progressivism. And you say, you see, these progressives, it's just they're a bunch
It's
of...
not just about anti-Semitism.
Well, anti-Semitism has become weaponized.
And it sounds like what you're saying, though, is that it's become weaponized on both sides of the awareness spectrum, not by the anti-Semitism people. It's that in the pre-internet or the pre-social media era, anti-Semitism was reported on by the media if it was something that was noteworthy.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't noteworthy, B'nai B'rith couldn't get their press release published, and they were just stuck. That was it. Now, when they have a tiny little incident where, I always remember this one, where somebody used a freshly 3 centimeters of snow and went on a car and painted with their finger a swastika. Right? It's some 9-year-old who said, whatever it was. Now we are going to go and promote this. We're going to talk about this. And if the Montreal Gazette isn't going to publish it, which I think that they actually did not, but the Suburban, which is the local, neighborhood, rag, made a whole thing about it. Well, if they're not going to talk about it, we're going to make this the central piece of our campaign for the next year, that the media doesn't talk about these anti-Semitic incidents, but the social media is out there able to get this message amplified by B'nai B'rith and by the other side, who are, now saying, well, what anti-Semitism? This is true anti-Semitism. This is now that we can talk about it. Yeah. And just the amplification is where it's at. But B'nai B'rith now, because they have a megaphone beyond real responsible media, they get to get it out there and talk about this as if it's so much bigger than it actually is.
I just don't. So I guess just bring it back to Twitter and Musk and all of this. I don't really see how any of the only anti-Semitism I see. Well, first of all, I should say on a personal but relevant level is I had not seen the Twitter Nazis out in full force for literally years until a couple days ago, when I suddenly had all these people tweeting. They found some tweet somewhere where I had referred to myself as white in some reply, and I kept getting this sort of avalanche of replies of white within the 3 parentheses, all these people suddenly telling me I'm Jewish. So
for the people who don't know, what are the 3 parentheses?
That means that it means that it's code that they've discovered that the senior editor of the Canadian Jewish News is Jewish. And I'm very impressed that they figured this out. But I had not. But what I'm saying is that I used to see this all the time on Twitter, years ago.
How did they not know? You can't spell schmaltz without maltz.
I mean, they researched it. They took the calipers to my face and they figured it all out. Basically what I'm saying is that I think something maybe did happen with Elon Musk empowering anti-Semites in the last few days in terms of this discussion of suing the ADL. That I think is maybe something relevant to an uptick of maybe internet anti-Semitism.
It's weird, but it's hard to disentangle.
It's hard to know.
It's hard to disentangle Musk's general weirdness from the socio-cultural, religious importance of this gesture of him suing the ADL. Also the thing is, Musk.
Remember, he's not actually suing the ADL. He's threatening to sue it.
Fair enough. But the other thing is, 6 hours from now, Musk will be chasing a new squirrel. The guy has a sort of a weird kind of ADHD, and who knows who he'll be attacking a day from now. If I can just pick up some of the historical overtones there, because it's absolutely true. You talked about 19th century France, and this brings up the Dreyfus case and stuff. Anti-Semitism tends to map itself on the pre-existing neuroses of a society.
Correct.
So when pestilence and plague were prominent in medieval Europe, Jews were accused of poisoning wells and stealing babies and stuff like that. When the germ theory of medicine was in its infancy, that attached itself to medieval anti-Semitism, and it was about Jews spreading disease and being a bacillus, which a horrifying image that was seized upon by the Nazis. And then, of course, with the protocols of the Elders of Zion, when there was the aristocrats had a neurosis about liberalism and capitalism and urbanism, Jews were seen at the center of that. What I'm seeing now in Canada is one of the primary anxieties people have about their well-being and the well-being of their children tends to focus around real estate, buying a house. And the primary focus of, I'm not sure conspiracism is the right word, it tends to be Asians. It tends to be primarily East Asians, but immigrants of all kinds who people see buying up homes. So if you go to Vancouver and you listen to people making, call it problematic statements about minority communities, if minority community is the right word in certain neighborhoods, it's basically who are the people coming and buying up our homes? And it may be Russians, but more often than that, it's East Asians. You don't hear people refer to Jews. Okay,
so I have a lot to say about that, specifically about the Asians thing. So this was actually one of the first things I noticed when I moved to Toronto in 2015, the amount of rather open anti-East Asian comments from people who I would have thought were progressive, from people who were themselves people of color, sometimes even Asian themselves. I heard a ton of this. And I was shocked by how open it was. And it was, like you say, to do with real estate. It was to do with international students. It was to do with the kind of crossover of these. I definitely can agree that you hear a lot of this. I think what's different with Asians and Jews, among other things, and yes, some people are Asian and Jewish. I'm sure we will have the one person who emails to let us know that that's possible.
Hi, Fred.
Some people
Hi, Fred.
in my own family
Yeah.
are. But anyway, that's a whole separate issue. The question is it the same thing? Well, I would say no, because Asia is large. There are a lot of Asian people in the whole world. Jews are this tiny global minority who are much more sort of talked about than acting ourselves. Like, there are just not many of us not doing a whole heck of a lot. So anti-Semitism has built into it this very specific thing of, and lends itself to this sort of conspiracizing, because they're just like, what we are actually doing, actual Jews, is like a blip compared to what's imagined to be happening. Whereas there just are like a whole lot of Asian people. And even if Asians are a minority in a particular North American city, in the world, there are a lot of Asians. I want to talk about DEI, though. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, known in Canada sometimes, but not always, as EDI, I have learned, correct? I know in higher ed it is.
They keep adding letters because
they're trying to make it happen.
By the time this podcast goes to air, there will be more letters. And like on you'll see some right-wing people on their Twitter, they insist on spelling it die, D-I-E, because like, what happens to a society when you embrace diversity? It dies. Like, so let's just say the diversity stuff. I mean, we know what you mean when you say EDI or DIE or whatnot.
But diversity could be like a sort of generic, banal, like, nice thing to
but it's
celebrate.
It's become idiomatic in the sense that, yes, you're right. I mean, who doesn't like diversity? Diversity is great.
For our purposes, though, the question then really is centered around where do Jews fit in?
Yeah.
And my experience of it has been that historically Jews spent decades and decades fighting to not be seen as a minority, so as to gain, membership in the greatest.
Well, to not be seen as a racialized minority. Obviously, we're a minority, but to not be seen as.
Well, no, I would even go so far as to say, no, we're part of society. We're just like everybody else. Right. Okay. We don't think of it as Christian and Jewish, or it's Judeo-Christian. Right. We want to be part of your clubs. We want to be members of, the greatest societies. We want to be partners in the law firms. And in order to do that, we need to not be seen as a minority of any kind. Right. And then as soon as being a minority is a good thing, right, the Jews want to automatically be part of the
Jews.
Yeah.
No, but Avi, I interrupt you on purpose because I'm saying that I think there's a split, right? Doesn't seem like all Jews want. It doesn't seem like this is necessarily about the same people being hypocritical. It seems like these might be different people wanting different things, different Jews wanting different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. All Jews matter.
But so can I jump in there? Because
please.
Canada is a particularly interesting example because in Canada, our human rights laws are very much a product of there's Alan Borovoy, who was head of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and other Jewish human rights leaders were among the leaders pressing for human rights legislation and the creation of human rights tribunals. And of course, in the United States example, everybody knows this, the much talked about Jewish support for the Black civil rights struggle. And I think it's broadly true that Jews generally have supported any intellectual and political movement, which, as Avi said, promotes the idea of a sort of Freemasonry of spirit among human beings. So like communism originally had the support of many Jews in Eastern Europe and also in North America because it emphasized the idea of a brotherhood of humanity and, erasing distinctions of race and faith that had a huge appeal for Jews. However, what's happened in terms of diversity in history, I agree that diversity, if you look it up in the dictionary and you accept that definition, is a good thing. But when I say the diversity industry, it means the sort of bureaucracy that's associated with, say, racial preferences, affirmative action, sensitivity training, campaigns against the supposed evilness of whiteness, heavy-handed decolonialization attempts in universities, and like sort of some of the heavy-handed stuff, which maybe is more contentious. It isn't just Jews who have been erased from that. It's, I would say, in many contexts, East Asians, particularly in the context of universities where they're overrepresented, gay men, lesbians increasingly say that we are now excluded. We are now no longer seen as an equity-seeking group. Just the opposite, in fact. You have trans women who see us as a barrier to their advancement because they see us as privileged, because we may be lesbians, but we're cis women, and so we have privilege. So I would say Jews are in that cohort of, call it graduates, from what is now known as equity-seeking or equity-deserving groups. If you look at the idiom of human rights legislation or of university human rights policies, is there's a whole cohort of people who are kind of honorary Christian white men. And it's like, okay, well, we're done with you. Now we're going to focus on Muslims, blacks, indigenous people, and transgender people, which are now often explicitly referred to as the main beneficiary group for a lot of EDI programming.
It's interesting that you don't mention class at all, and I don't mean that you don't mention it, but that's interesting that, but I mean, I think that's important.
100%, and it's very reductionist, because when you talk about a Toronto Jew, you could be talking about a fourth generation Jew who lives in Forest Hill in, a $10 million house with you can't even walk in the garage. There's so many strollers. They're actually
waiting for the stroller.
Walking on the strollers. Okay. To somebody who lives up at I don't know, Lawrence and Bathurst, and maybe is a recent Russian immigrant and, has trouble paying the rent and is economically disadvantaged. But this is part of a larger conversation about erasing considerations of class.
I feel like you just erased the middle class there.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I have erased the middle class because when you talk about privilege, it has a centrifugal effect on the conversation. Yes. Is that everybody who's
tell me?
Well, I mean, everybody who's underprivileged. Actually, I'm not even sure you can say underprivileged, but there's oppressed and oppressors, and yes. It's a fundamentally Manichaean understanding of how society works. Some people source it to Marxism. I source it to human nature. People are tribal, and we tend to divide every society into two tribes. But yeah, the economic considerations, traditional Marxist analysis has largely been erased from the progressive political discussion because of the focus on skin color, faith, and gender preference.
I mean, it's all very interesting. So I've been following this. So the book I wrote about privilege came out in 2017, and a lot has and hasn't changed since then. But what I've noticed, really, the main thing I would say that I've noticed since then is the way that there was this kind of moment when women were the ultimate in the oppressed. Women were considered extremely oppressed. There was Donald Trump. There was Me Too, all of this discussion. And even before Me Too, there was Title IX in the US and all this discussion of campus sexual assault, all these viral videos of women being catcalled and how terrible that was. And people weren't overly dwelling on the fact that the catcallers were themselves seemingly underprivileged, often racialized men, whatever. There was a different conversation, but then everything switched and it became the absolute opposite with 2020. And then it became instead that it was Black Lives Matter and women are Karens, basically, if they're not.
Phoebe, you know this better than me, but my sense as an outsider, obviously, to a lot of these conversations that were happening among women, there was that march in Washington that blew up because over the question of whether white feminists were bad people because they were all racist. You remember that big march in Washington that blew up? To me, the conversation changed around that time because there was this internecine struggle within that aspect of the feminist movement where, it was just in the space of a couple of months, white women in particular went from being like, preach on, sister. Yeah, you tell them to like, shut up, Karen.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's certainly one of several inflection points. I mean, there was that, but I would also say there was like the whole sort of 2020 girl boss downfall, where every other article was about a white female entrepreneur who was actually problematic now. And this was sort of like it was like Me Too repeated itself, but with all these mainly white, not always white women.
If I can recenter this back to the Jews, of course, because it's always about the Jews. Are Jews white? Right. That is the fundamental question, because
clearly, as you who can see me on video can see, I'm obviously a dark-skinned black person because I'm Jewish, and that's how it works. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, of course Jews are white. Because if you look at the idea of because look, whiteness is a cultural construct. And, 50 years ago, whiteness, it was awesome. What's wrong with being white? It's so great. Look, we own all the banks and stuff like that. We're like, it's like Jews writ large. Now whiteness is bad. And to be whiteness is coded. I'm going to use Phoebe's vernacular here. Whiteness is coded as privileged, as, maybe overeducated, having nice things, access to good schools, lots of diplomas on the wall, maybe a cottage. And if you look at Toronto, Jews are the whitest people in Toronto. If to the extent that whiteness means all the things I just said, with exceptions. Like, if you Hasidic people are not the whitest people in Toronto, right?
That's fair to say.
But if you look, if I took the arithmetic average of religious observance and socioeconomic status of Jews in Toronto, you would find an extremely white person, as whiteness is defined right now.
I would go with something much simpler, which is just who do people think you are when you walk down the street? And I think that people will often say, okay, well, now it's Jews seem white, but in the past, no. And I would say that that's not true. I think in the past also Jews seemed white, and that's why the Nazis, to bring everything back to the Nazis, that's why they made Jews wear a yellow star, right. Because you didn't know who was Jewish, because Jews looked like... And the difference was that white versus not white was not the parameter that racists of that time and place were so interested in, but racists in America and in North America more broadly to some extent have been interested in white versus non-white for quite some time, and Jews have
and that's the analogy
for I mean, I feel like I remember many years ago reading one of these academic books on Jews and whiteness, and it never once mentioned like what people look like, and it seemed a little bit relevant here. Anyway,
I like to point out that Judaism is purely a religion. Right, that anybody can be Jewish. There are black, and there are black Jews.
Yes, there are
black
Asians. Jews. I think we all know that.
And then that being said, I can still hold into my mind, right, the idea that the only reason why this question makes sense is because Jews are so fucking white.
Yeah.
And the fact is that the people who ask these questions and say that we're oppressed as Jews and we're not really white and we can't really pass are the ones that are never wearing kippahs. And I wear a kippah. Right, out and about in society, and I'm it's not about and I'm the one that like passes all the time. I'm not for white, but like until you see my kippah, I just walking in the street and I get it. So the question is there because it's so easy to see that it's obvious that even if you are Sephardic, you often look very similar to everybody else. And I'm half Sephardic. I thought when I was applying to American universities that I should put down that I'm African American because 50% of me of my genes is literally coming from Africa.
I knew a lot of people in high school who had this approach.
But apparently North Africa doesn't count.
Really?
Well, it's because you're above the Sahara. You're above the Sahara.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So speaking of what people look like, I hear that there is an important story in sport. Well, and I don't really follow sports, so Jon's going to explain what this is about.
The most whitest of all sports.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just still processing Avi coming out to me as BIPOC. So the fact that you call baseball one of the whitest of sports shows to me how little you know about baseball. Because
that's why I turned to you, Jon, to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm clearly like a sports expert because I'm wearing a baseball hat and stuff. Well, it's an F1 hat. But baseball is one of the most amazing things about baseball, of the many amazing things, is how, especially in recent years, how multicultural it is. So the Toronto Blue Jays are not unusual in that they have a lot of players from Latin America. They have guys who look like your traditional white campus jock. You have a Japanese pitcher. You have someone from Korea. And now you have somebody who played on Team Israel. This guy, the first name isn't particularly Jewish. It's Spencer. But Spencer Horowitz.
You haven't been to bar mitzvahs lately.
Oh, is it? Oh, Spencer has become like a Jewish thing?
Totally.
Really?
Okay, so I'm Google image searching now because of a reason because I was instructed effectively to do so.
Yeah.
Because why?
Well, because he's...
I'm trying to decide. Like, the photos of this man are very confusing because in some of the photos, it would be a yes, and in others of the photos, it's like the Seinfeld
episode
sure.
where the girlfriend is in the shadow.
Sides of the face.
Yeah. Everything comes back. So the photo I saw of him, because what happens is, so he's, just to fill people in who aren't baseball fans, who aren't from Toronto, he's a rookie. So he just, in the last couple of days, he started to make appearances on the field with the Toronto Blue Jays as they're making a playoff run. And I was like, Spencer Horowitz, that's an unusual baseball name. And I Googled him. And the first photo that came up is like him looking like this baseball golem. And he had his Team Israel shirt on. Now, say Team Israel, like it's kind of like a lot of sports where the Israeli national team is composed of guys who moved from the United States and were really good at like hockey or, in this case, baseball. And so I actually don't know much about his background, except, I know how attractive he is, and statuesque. I mean, like his posture is amazing. But
I think we may have to agree to disagree a little bit here, Jon.
He looks like kind of an IDF recruiting poster from 30 years ago. Like it's sort of he looks
Shmulik.
Yeah, he does. He looks like Shmulik, like the part-time paratrooper who also goes back to the Moshav to help his parents, like with the farming and stuff like that. Like he's the perfect.
Perhaps that is his Mossad cover as being a Blue Jay.
That would be the coolest thing if he like went from city to city in North America hitting home runs by day, and by night he was like, I don't know,
sending messages back to the Mossad.
Or he sent,
and you know that they use the Dome of the Rock. It turns into a satellite dish at night.
He sends coded messages like with his home runs and stuff like that. But it's actually like for all the strides that Jews have made in so many domains, professional baseball, Jews are still rare enough that one comes around, people point it out. Or hockey is the same way, which, by the way, hockey is a much whiter sport. So this guy, Hyman, Avi, Phoebe, even you guys, you probably know who Hyman was.
Zach Hyman.
No, I don't know who anybody is.
Nice Jewish boy who played Jewish, and he plays hockey in a very non-Jewish way. Like he parks his ass in front of the net and doesn't move until he shovels the puck into he's a very physical player.
I guess some people would want to claim that this man is not white because he's Jewish. I think this man is white.
He's super white.
Search, and this is
he's
a
super
white.
White. He's super white. He's
sorry, anti-Semites of the world, but that's a white man there.
By the way, can I just this go back full circle because we were talking about like Nazis and Twitter Nazis and Nazi Twitter. Most of the people, I get more trolls on Twitter from progressives who call me a Nazi than from actual Nazis who call me a Jew. And I would say this helps definitively answer the question of whether Jews have become white in the affirmative, that it's no longer an effective rejoinder to say, well, I can't be a Nazi because I'm Jewish, because a lot of my trolls, they don't care about that anymore.
Okay. Oh, I have a rejoinder to that, though, which is that people are now saying that anybody can be a white supremacist, even if they're not white.
Especially Hispanics. In fact, the New York Times...
So are Hispanics white, then?
The New York Times actually had an op-ed 2 days ago, basically talking about, like, isn't it terrible that Latin Americans are such white supremacists now, which to me kind of like erodes the currency of calling someone a white supremacist. If it just means you're somebody who has opinions I don't like, regardless of your skin color. So.
But I think that this means that it's not, if you're Jewish and you get called a Nazi, that means that you're white. I think it's more that like everybody can be called
maybe, yeah, you're right. You're right. You could be an Asian white supremacist, or you could be.
It's what I said. You're always you can often be either an oppressed or an oppressor, and sometimes you are both in varieties of situations.
Right.
You can be oppressing, white non-whites while still being non-white in a different way. Yeah. Well, we've covered like a million different things here. We'd love to hear what you think. Please do email us. I feel like this is going to be the episode where we get a barrage, a deluge of emails. Email us at bonjour@cjn.ca. We really would love to hear what you think.
Please let me know if you think I'm Jewish or not by your use of parentheses around my name, because otherwise I might not find out.
Yeah. John, will you stick around and give us some nachas?
Sure.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't cost me anything, right?
No, it's free today.
Are you in the market for a new watch or a special piece of jewelry? Are you looking for the perfect engagement ring to pop the question? Atelier Lou has all this and more. Eric and the team at Atelier Lou can craft a piece for you, or you can select from some of the exclusive designers that they offer. From a simple bangle to a statement necklace, Atelier Lou can make you or your loved ones sparkle. Located in the heart of Westmount in Montreal or online at atelierlou.com, visit Atelier Lou for your next watch or jewelry purchase. And when you do, make sure to use promo code BON18 for 10% off your next purchase. That's atelierlou.com.
John, what's your nachas this week?
So I've developed this super sick forehand in disc golf. We haven't even talked about disc golf, have we?
I noticed the trophies of disc golf behind you.
They're not trophies per se. I kind of make my own trophies just to celebrate my accomplishments. But my biggest accomplishment athletically during COVID was becoming a pretty good disc golfer. I'd say that's as close as I've come to any kind of celebration-worthy accomplishment.
You're going to be recruited to Team Israel.
Well, so there is a disc golf course in Israel, and I know this because my friend Josh Kalman visits me from Rehovot every couple of years, and I gave him a bunch of discs to take back. Unfortunately, like it's in sort of like the scrubland, and I think it might even be in a contested Palestinian area. So geopolitics may be conspiring against the rise of disc golf, because you need like 15 acres to have a good disc golf course. And you know what happens when Israelis need 15 acres. Like,
are you making anti-Semitic jokes about Jews in real estate?
No. This is, sorry. No, absolutely not. This is the furthest thing. I'm accusing them of a blood libel against Palestinians. I'm not doing the real estate thing.
Oh boy.
Okay.
So is your nachas disc golf related then?
Yeah, it's not. But you're the guy who made the joke about the Jews in the
the Volkswagen.
Yes,
in the ashtray. But by the way, kids don't even know what an ashtray is anymore.
Yeah.
You show them an ashtray, they're like,
what?
Is that a really tiny cereal bowl?
Yeah, with a spoon rest. Phoebe.
With 3 spoon rests.
What's your nachas, Phoebe?
Mine is, and this is a little bit cheating because I already wrote about it for our website, that it's extremely Jewish over at the, of all places, Sororin Farmers Market, the weekly West Toronto farmers market near me. To explain what a Toronto farmers market, or at least this farmers market is, it's because farmers market can mean all different things. It's almost like if you watch British TV, or maybe this is how it actually is in Britain, like the Village Fete. Like a lot of sort of family activities and a lot of just sort of see and be seen, a lot of, music playing and all this anyway. So there is a stand that I don't think it was there this week, but it's often there, from Lev Bakery, which is apparently founded 2020, that sells food at farmers markets and sells challah and babka and things of that nature, as well as hats that say challah and babka and things of that nature. So for the baseball cap seeker, there's something to consider, I guess. And I thought, okay, that's like surprisingly Jewish for this traditionally Polish and not particularly Jewish seeming pocket of Toronto where I live. And then on Monday, there was klezmer music from, and it was like there was some in Yiddish and some was in Hebrew. And that was, and there was this moment where the performer was like, Mayim, because he sang some song that was like Mayim, 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 and then he's like, Mayim means water, and I'm like, so it does, and it was just this very strange thing, because I would not have expected. I always claim to be the only Jew in the neighborhood, which I know is not true. There's literally another Jew from the CJN who's like down the street from me, but yeah. Anyway, so my nachas, but this is not just a nachas. This is also a crossover for the Jews and whiteness thing, because if there is a substantial Jewish cultural presence at this farmer's market, I don't think we can claim much in the way of non-whiteness. Anyway.
Farmers markets are super white.
Right. That's been in the stuff white people like lists from like 2010.
Yeah, it's like the top three.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So Avi, what are you going to knock us?
I'm going to follow in your heels in so many various verticals that I'm going to hit right here in terms of white people and klezmer and all that. There's an article a few weeks ago from the JTA, Jewish Telegraphic Agency, that had the headline, Crop Tops, Kippas, and Klezmer, a Jewish rave scene takes hold in New York City.
Oh my God.
And I had so much hope for this, and then I realized that it's actually this one person who has decided to call this new genre of music kleztronica, a young woman named Kaya Berman-Peters, who's part of like a wonderful klezmer group called Leviathan. She is a great musician. She's the child of academics and musicians, and has gone into music and has decided that she's going to merge klezmer and rave music and electronica, and it's going to become a movement. And as far as I can tell, this movement is entirely her. The pictures in this article are the least ravey looking pictures imaginable.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it. I see one crop top.
What I love about this is that the first of these ideas that she talks about as a deeply rooted respect for Yiddish tradition and Jewish ancestry, the second honors the black and radical lineage of electronic music, Chicago house music, dub in Jamaica, house in Detroit. And you look into these photographs and they are all white. They have nothing to do with black rave culture, with house music, with Detroit, with Chicago, with any of this stuff. This is one person who's decided that she is going to create the movement. She is going to talk about it as being grounded in other
she went
cultures
to Harvard,
and societies.
Right?
I think she still is in Harvard. Yeah.
Okay.
But really it is one, you can't even hear the music. I've heard a couple of clips because there was a WBGO did a piece about her, and there were some clips of the music, but at the end of the day, she hasn't put out an album. She's just made 3 or 4 events for white people during daylight hours, I might say. If you look at these photographs, this is like daytime parties in Queens. Not exactly very rave-y at all, but all the power to people for trying to make music.
Sorry, this nachas sounds...
It's a drag performance. I'm very confused.
Some of them are drag.
I'm on the website and I'm just confused about what it is. It seems like it's a lot of everything.
Yeah, my nachas is that people are trying to make music, even if ultimately sometimes...
No. I'm calling it... Your nachas was basically kvetching.
Yeah.
Disguised as nachas.
More of a kvetch.
Disguised as nachas.
I wanted to like this so much.
No, but but that doesn't count as nachas. That's like say, well, I thought this would be positive, but instead I'm going to bitch about this for a second.
Her band Leviathan is actually a very good band. I will say that much. And
that was very interesting. Very interesting, but don't call that nachas. Can I have a second nachas? Like disc golf and Superstore. That's going to be my second nachas. Sure. Well, because Avi didn't really give us a nachas.
I give a half a nachas.
No, it's 0 nachas. It was just like a rant.
Yeah. I don't feel like yours was crazy.
It was a disgrace to the nachas brand is what it was, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Bonjour Chai for the week ending September 9th, Shabbat Parashat and Nitzavim. The show is produced and edited by Zach Kaufman. The executive producer for CJN Podcasts is Michael Freeman. Our music is by SoCalled. We are a project of the Jewish Living Lab and are distributed by the CJN Podcast Network. You can listen to all our past episodes on our page at thecjn.ca/bonjour, and you can subscribe to the podcast and automatically receive all episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We would love it if you told a friend about Bonjour Chai. It is always one of the best ways we get new listeners. And as always, you can email us with comments at bonjour@thecjn.ca.
Jewish comedy legend Modi and Hasidic rapper Nissim Black are coming to Toronto to perform live at UJA's campaign launch on September 7th. Visit jewishtoronto.com to get your tickets today. Don't miss Modi and Nissim Black on September 7th. Go to jewishtoronto.com for your ticket today.